You're not going to believe this.
What is it?
So apparently there's a podcast
Okay.
from the magical world
Whoa.
called Muggle Mic,
Muggle Mic. Huh.
and the hosts, Dylan and Mariana, welcoming everybody to,
Yeah, like dive into the mysteries
Yeah.
of the magical world and all that. Uncover the things you never knew. And
uncover things you never knew.
explore the wizarding world like never before.
Listen to Muggle Mic.
Welcome back, Deep Divers. Today we're heading to Hogwarts.
Always a fun destination.
But this time, it's not about the feasts or even Quidditch. You guys wanted a deep dive into, get this, the classes they offer at Hogwarts.
The curriculum, huh?
Yeah, and I gotta say, I'm kind of geeking out about this one myself. I mean, sure, we might not be apparating to class anytime soon, but there's something, kind of fascinating about exploring their courses.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's more than just, waving a wand and saying a few spells. The way magic works, the way it's taught, it reveals a whole system of knowledge. It's got its own rules, its history, even its own ethical dilemmas, really.
Right. And our source here, it actually breaks down all 25 subjects. We've got the core classes that, every young witch and wizard has to take. Then you've got your electives, even some things that look more like, extracurriculars. Honestly, I'm a little overwhelmed. Where do we even start?
Well, I think a good place to start is with those core classes. Think of it like our Muggle versions of, math, science, literature, but magically infused, of course.
So potions class is basically their algebra. Instead of solving for X, you're trying to figure out the right amount of, newt tail to add to make sure your potion doesn't explode or something.
Exactly. And just like our core subjects, each one at Hogwarts builds on the others. Take charms, for example. It's not just about, memorizing spells and swishing your wand. It's about precision, intention, focus, the way magic responds to the user, you see.
Okay, so if charms is like the foundation, then transfiguration, that's got to be next level stuff, literally changing an object's form.
Yeah.
It's got to teach you about, the very nature of change itself, would you say?
You're getting it. And then, of course, you have defense against the dark arts, which, who wouldn't want to learn how to deal with nasty curses and creepy creatures?
Speaking of creepy, the source mentions history of magic is taught by a ghost. Is that, normal, even for Hogwarts?
Yeah.
That's got to make taking notes difficult.
It might seem like a quirky little detail, but think about the implications here. A ghost, retaining knowledge, even being able to teach. It suggests that magic interacts with life and death in ways we can only imagine. If magic can linger even after the veil, what else is possible?
Whoa, that's a lot deeper than I initially thought. Okay. All right, moving on from ghostly professors. There's herbology, which I guess that's kind of like their version of botany, but with, a magical twist. I took a botany class in college, but I don't recall ever dealing with a screaming mandrake.
Right. Herbology is about more than just, potting plants. It's about recognizing that plants have powerful properties, both in the magical and Muggle world. I mean, think about it. So many herbs and plants have been used in traditional medicine for centuries. Herbology is like that, but amplified,
So it's not just about, tending magical plants. It's about understanding their power. That knowledge could be used for healing or potion making or I guess some not so nice things too.
You're catching on quickly. And that actually brings us to something you might really enjoy, the electives.
Electives, finally.
This is where Hogwarts students get to, really specialize, just like choosing electives in our world.
The part where you actually get to pick classes that, interest you. What kind of magical electives are we talking about here?
Oh, there's a whole list, but knowing your love of all things strange and wonderful, I have a feeling care of magical creatures would be right up your alley. There's also Arithmancy, which, it dives into the magical properties of numbers. And then there's the study of ancient runes, which is essentially deciphering magical language and symbols.
Care of magical creatures. Sign me up. Who wouldn't want to hang out with magical creatures all day long?
I think you'd find it's a bit more than just, petting cute, fluffy creatures. It teaches respect for different life forms, understanding their role in magical ecosystems. Imagine trying to care for a dragon, for instance. It's not exactly like cuddling a puppy.
True, you probably don't want to get on a dragon's bad side. But what about arithmancy? I'll admit, math wasn't my favorite subject back in school, but add some magic to it, and I'm suddenly intrigued.
It's not just about crunching numbers, you see. It's about understanding the deeper magical properties that numbers hold. And it makes you wonder, is arithmancy really a separate discipline? Or could it be the foundation upon which other magic is built? Almost like a magical physics, you know?
Whoa, I never thought of it that way. Like someone really skilled in arithmancy could potentially manipulate magic on a whole other level, right?
And then there's ancient runes, which kind of sounds like, well, a magical version of archaeology. Deciphering secret codes, uncovering hidden knowledge. That always gets my inner Indiana Jones fired up. It's similar in a way, but it's more than just digging up old artifacts. Think about it. Runes are the building blocks of magical language. They carry power, history. They even contain spells within their very structure. So mastering runes, it's like cracking the code of how magic is formed, how it's passed down. Through generations, through time.
That is fascinating. So it's not just about understanding the past. It's about understanding the very essence of how magic works. I can see why someone, with a curious mind like yours would be drawn to that.
It certainly keeps you on your toes. And speaking of intriguing subjects, our source also mentions some activities that seem to fall outside the typical classroom setting. Flying, obviously, is a big one, but then there's ancient studies. Is that their version of archaeology, or is there more to it?
Yeah, learning to fly a broomstick, that's practically a rite of passage at Hogwarts, right?
Yeah.
But ancient studies, I'm not sure I get the appeal. Is that just for, history buffs? Or does it offer something more practical?
I think it's about more than just dusty old artifacts. Remember, magic has a long and complex history, and understanding the past can illuminate the present. Ancient studies could be the key to understanding the evolution of magic itself. Perhaps it even holds clues to, forgotten spells or magical practices, things that could be, rediscovered and used today.
So it's not just about knowing history. It's about potentially uncovering lost knowledge. Knowledge that could reshape the magical world as we know it.
Now you're getting it. And that makes me wonder, does Hogwarts offer any classes that are purely for fun or personal enrichment? Or is everything geared toward training students for a specific role in their world?
That's a good question.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about ancient studies broadening your historical perspective, and even arithmancy hinting at a deeper understanding of magic structure. But those still seem to have some tie to, the magical world. What if they had a class on, magical music theory or magical art history?
Maybe those are hidden gems just waiting to be discovered within the Hogwarts curriculum. But there's one area that, unfortunately, isn't so hidden. It casts a bit of a shadow over this whole idea of magical education, actually.
You're talking about defense against the dark arts, right? It seems essential, but what about when Hogwarts was forced to teach actual dark arts? That's a bit disturbing, to say the least.
It's a chilling reminder that even in a world of magic, power and control can corrupt. Even the most well-intentioned systems, this situation, it reflects a real-world issue, doesn't it? The manipulation of education for, nefarious purposes. It happens more than we'd like to think, even in our own world.
So instead of learning how to defend against dark magic, students were being taught how to use it. Can't imagine what that must have been like.
It's a dark chapter in Hogwarts history, for sure. And it raises some really disturbing questions. How does exposure to dark magic, even in a controlled setting, affect young minds? Does it desensitize them to its dangers, make them more likely to use it? Or could understanding it from the inside help them resist its allure?
Those are tough questions. It's a reminder that even in a fantastical world, education can be a powerful tool, for good or for evil.
Precisely. It highlights the responsibility that comes with knowledge, especially when you're dealing with something as potentially dangerous as magic, but it also emphasizes the importance of critical thinking, Learning to question, to analyze, to discern truth from manipulation, even when it's coming from a figure of authority, that's crucial. And that's a skill that no magic spell can replace.
You've given me a lot to think about. I went into this thinking I had a decent grasp on the Hogwarts curriculum, but this deep dive has shown me there's so much more to it than meets the eye.
What's truly fascinating is that even within a fictional world, exploring these educational choices, it reveals a lot about the values and priorities of that society, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And honestly, this has just sparked more questions in my mind. There's so much more to uncover here. What stands out to you so far?
It's hard to pick just one, really. There are so many layers to this whole curriculum. But I'm curious, what's grabbed your attention so far? If you were, heading to Hogwarts, which class would be at the top of your list?
Honestly, I'm torn. Part of me is still stuck on Care of Magical Creatures. Come on, those magical creatures, they just sound incredible. But then again, learning ancient runes, like actually uncovering the secrets behind magic itself. That's pretty tempting, too.
That's the beauty of it, right? It sparks that genuine thirst for knowledge, that desire to explore and discover. And there's still so much more to uncover.
You're right. Our source mentions some other classes that pique my interest. Alchemy, for example. It almost sounds too complex for school. You know what I mean?
Alchemy is definitely a fascinating one. It's described as a blend of, let's see, transfiguration, potions, even a bit of Muggle chemistry, all with a focus on, well, manipulating elements for transmutation.
Alchemy. Isn't that what, like, those alchemists were trying to do back in the Middle Ages? You know, turning lead into gold and all that. It seems a little outdated in a world where, you can just use a magic wand.
It might seem that way on the surface, but think about it this way. Alchemy, at its core, is all about understanding the fundamental building blocks of matter. Perhaps in the wizarding world, it's not about replacing magic, but more about bridging the gap between magic and science.
So maybe instead of just, casting a spell to transform something, alchemists are trying to understand the why and the how behind that transformation. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. And if alchemy holds the secrets to manipulating matter on such a fundamental level, who knows what possibilities that could unlock? It could revolutionize, everything from potion making to healing, maybe even create entirely new forms of magic.
Now that you mention it, there's another class that seems connected to the Muggle world. Muggle studies. What do you think wizards learn about us?
It's fascinating to consider, isn't it? I imagine they'd study our history, our culture, our technology, but from a completely different perspective, of course. What aspects of Muggle life do you think they'd find most intriguing? Or even, even baffling?
Can you imagine trying to explain the internet to someone who grew up using owls for mail? or smartphones to someone who can just, apparate across countries?
It'd be a fascinating cultural exchange, wouldn't it? But I think that's the point of Muggle studies, really. It challenges wizards to step outside their magical bubble and recognize that there are other ways of knowing and experiencing the world.
And maybe even learn a thing or two from us Muggles.
Right.
Even if it's just, how to appreciate a good cup of coffee without needing a magic spell.
Precisely. And while we're on the topic of bridging worlds, let's not forget about a class that's a core part of the Hogwarts experience.
Flying.
Ah, yes. Flying class. Who hasn't dreamed of soaring through the air on a broomstick? It seems like more of a fun activity than a serious subject, though, doesn't it? It's definitely a rite of passage at Hogwarts, but I think there's more to it than just, the thrill of flying. It represents freedom, mobility, and mastery of a skill that's unique to their world.
I guess it's kind of like learning to drive a car in our world, right?
Yeah,
it's a skill you need to navigate your environment. But in their world, it's not just about getting from point A to point B. It's about, experiencing a whole different dimension of movement.
Exactly. And like learning to drive, I'm sure there are, rules, regulations, and probably even the occasional magical equivalent of a fender bender.
I can only imagine the chaos of a wizarding traffic jam during rush hour. Okay, there's one class on the list that always confuses me. Divination. It's really a subject you can teach.
Divination, with its crystal balls and tea leaves and cryptic pronouncements, it's definitely one of the more esoteric subjects, that's for sure.
Our source mentions everything from like astrology to dream interpretation. But is it a true magical art, or is it just a fancy way of reading signs and symbols? I mean, is it really knowledge or just, guesswork?
That's a great question. It gets to the heart of what constitutes knowledge in the magical world, doesn't it? Is it based on observable facts, like in potions, or does it delve into realms of intuition and premonition?
So it's less about hard and fast rules and more about, informed speculation.
Perhaps. But even speculation to be useful needs some kind of framework, right? A set of principles to guide interpretation. Maybe that's what divination teaches. Not necessarily what to see, but how to see, how to look beyond the surface and recognize patterns even in seemingly random events.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Maybe divination isn't about predicting the future, but rather about preparing for multiple possibilities.
Exactly, and perhaps that's why it remains a part of the Hogwarts curriculum. It encourages a different way of thinking, one that embraces uncertainty and considers multiple perspectives. In a world as complex as theirs, maybe that's a valuable skill in itself.
Okay, so maybe I shouldn't dismiss divination just yet. There could be more to it than I realized. But speaking of valuable skills, you brought up something earlier that I want to go back to. This idea that even magical education is geared toward preparing students for a specific role in their society.
Ah, yes, the whole productive member of the wizarding world concept. We've seen how each class, from potions to charms to defense against the dark arts, while they all seem to equip students with skills that could be directly applied to careers in their world.
But does that mean there's no room for learning just for the pure joy of it? Are there any classes at Hogwarts that are purely for personal enrichment, for expanding horizons without necessarily having a practical application?
That's a great question. We talked about ancient studies, which broadens historical perspective, and even divination, which encourages a different way of thinking. But those still seem to have some connection to the magical world, don't they?
Right. It makes me wonder, if you could design a brand new elective for Hogwarts, what would it be? What gap in magical knowledge would it fill? What unique skills would it impart?
That's a challenge. I'd have to give that some serious thought. What about you? What would your dream elective be?
That's a tough one. But thinking about it, if I could create a new elective at Hogwarts, I think I'd call it Muggle Ingenuity.
Muggle Ingenuity. That's certainly a unique title. What would that class, what would that even look like?
Well, we talked about Muggle studies, right?
Yeah.
Where wizards learn about like Muggle culture and technology. But what if there was a class that went deeper, one that really explored the creative problem solving and the innovation that Muggles have achieved without magic?
I see where you're going with this. It wouldn't be about, dismissing magic or anything like that. It'd be more about recognizing the different paths that humans have taken to understand and shape the world around them. After all, Muggles have accomplished some incredible things, right?
Exactly. Students could learn about, I don't know, everything from the invention of the printing press to the development of the internet, from the construction of skyscrapers to the exploration of outer space. It's all about showcasing the resourcefulness of the human spirit, even without magic to help them along.
Imagine the discussions, trying to explain the concept of electricity or the internet to someone who's used to magic their whole life. It'd be a fascinating exploration of different ways of thinking.
And who knows, maybe it would even inspire some magical innovation. Sometimes all it takes is a fresh perspective to spark a groundbreaking idea, right?
Perhaps. Imagine a collaboration between, say, a charms expert and a Muggle engineer. The possibilities are, they're pretty much endless.
Right. I'm already picturing a self-stirring cauldron, powered by a tiny Muggle motor, or a magically enhanced telescope that can see even farther into the cosmos. Combining magic with Muggle ingenuity, I mean, that could lead to some truly remarkable advancements.
It seems you've really hit on something here. Muggle ingenuity, it really could be a valuable addition to that Hogwarts curriculum. It would foster cross-cultural understanding and appreciation, while also inspiring a whole new generation of magical innovators.
Well, if Hogwarts ever decides to add it to their course catalog, they know who to call for a guest lecture. But in all seriousness, I think this whole exercise has highlighted something really important. Even within, a fictional world like Harry Potter's, education's about so much more than just acquiring knowledge. It's about developing, critical thinking skills, fostering empathy, and ultimately preparing students to navigate a complex and ever-changing world.
Well said. We've seen how the Hogwarts curriculum, with its blend of core classes and those specialized electives, and even those quirky extracurriculars, it really does seem to provide a holistic education. It goes beyond just training witches and wizards for specific jobs. It encourages them to think critically, to embrace different perspectives, and to recognize the interconnectedness of all things magical and mundane alike.
Exactly. And as we've explored all these different subjects, we've uncovered some pretty profound questions along the way. What is the true nature of magic? What are the ethical implications of wielding such power? And how can we bridge the gap between different ways of knowing and understanding the world around us?
These are questions that don't have, easy answers, but the very act of asking them, well, that's a testament to the power of a good education. And that, I believe, is the true magic of Hogwarts. It ignites a spark of curiosity, a thirst for knowledge, and a lifelong pursuit of understanding.
Beautifully put. And for all of you listeners out there, we'd love to hear your thoughts. If you could design your own Hogwarts elective, what would it be? What magical or Muggle knowledge would you want to share with the world?
Share your ideas, keep exploring, and never stop learning.
And on that note, we'll bid you farewell.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep those wands at the ready and those minds open to the wonders of the world, both magical and otherwise. Thanks for joining us for this podcast.
Absolutely.
Keep exploring.
Keep exploring.
Stay curious.
Stay curious.
We'll
Yeah.
see you next time.
See you later.
Yeah.
Subscribe and hit the bell icon.
Bye.
Explore the wizarding world like never before.
Yeah.
Listen to Muggle Mic.